I'm 95 years old. I am sitting in a room that smells of industrial lavender and dying lilies, watching a clock that I didn't buy in a house that isn't mine. I've buried my wife. I've buried my friends. I've buried every excuse I ever used to justify my absence from my own life. From this vantage point, this high, cold cliff of old age, the view is terrifyingly clear. I see the world you're rushing toward, and I see you running into the same fog that blinded me. You think you're building a life? You're not. You're middle managing a tragedy. Stop. Look at the screen. Look at your life. How much of your day is spent performing for people who wouldn't show up to your funeral? When was the last time you sat in total silence with someone you claimed to love, without a screen acting as a respirator for the conversation? If you died at midnight, how many important emails would remain unread, and how many of those people would actually care by noon tomorrow? Why are you trading the only currency that matters seconds for a paper printed by men who don't know your name? You think you have time. That is the lie that kills you. You think there is a later where the intimacy happens, where the legacy begins, where the real life starts. There is no later. There is only the mounting interest on the debt of your soul. The ledger of November 14, 1987, I can tell you exactly when I signed the contract to become a ghost. It was November 14, 1987. I remember the smell of that morning stale coffee and the sharp metallic tang of an early frost on the windows of our suburban colonial. My son David was turning 10. He was a small boy then, with a cowlick that defied any comb and a habit of humming under his breath when he was building things with his wooden blocks. He had a school play that night. He had exactly 3 lines. He had practiced them for 3 weeks in front of the hallway mirror. He was playing a tree or a guard, it didn't matter. To him, it was the Royal Shakespeare Company. I had a meeting. A $40,000 bonus was on the line. I told myself it was for him. I told myself that the $40,000 would buy the safety, the college fund, the better life I never had. I was choosing the future over the present, a ghost over a boy. I walked into that boardroom at 6:00 p.m. The air was dry, recycled, and smelled of expensive wool suits and ozone from the Xerox machine. I felt powerful. I felt like a provider. I won the bonus. I shook hands. I was a success. I got home at 10:30 p.m. The house was quiet. The frost on the windows had turned to a thick, opaque ice. On the kitchen table sat a paper crown, crumpled, and a cold plate of birthday cake with a single, half-melted green candle. I felt a twinge of guilt, but I silenced it with logic. I went out the next day and bought him a Nintendo. I spent $300 to buy back the look of disappointment I hadn't even been there to see. I handed him the controller, patted his head, and went back to my office to chase the next bonus. I thought I was investing. I didn't realize I was paying for his silence. For the next 6 years, David played that console alone in his room while I worked until the stars turned gray. I was building a legacy. I was climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. I saw the light under his door every night, but I never opened it. I was too tired. I was too busy. I was too successful. I fell for the inheritance delusion. I believed that providing for his future justified erasing myself from his present. I thought love was a bank account that I could deposit into now and withdraw from later. But the later arrived and the account was empty. That was 1973. By 1980, the silence in the house had become a physical weight, like a heavy wool blanket soaked in gray rainwater. By 1990, the boy who hummed while he built blocks was a man who looked at me with the polite, distant gaze of a waiter taking an order from a table he's forgotten twice. Now, I sit here in the quiet. I did the math once. It is the only thing left to do when your legs don't work and the memories start to rot. Over 40 years, I spent roughly $487,000 raising that boy. The private schools, the braces, the summer camps he went to so I could work more hours, the cars, the Nintendo, the wedding gift I used to buy my way into the front row of a ceremony where I felt like a tourist, $500,000. But I looked back at the calendar of my soul. I counted the minutes of actual connection, not "did you finish your homework?" or "pass the salt." I mean connection. The moments where our spirits touched, the times I actually listened to what he feared, the times he felt safe enough to tell me he was lonely. 47 hours. In 40 years, I got 47 hours of my son's heart. When you divide the investment by the reality, the numbers scream. I paid $10,362 for every single hour of connection I have with the man who carries my name. He calls me twice a year now, Christmas and my birthday. I've timed the calls. They average 6 minutes. He asks about the weather. I ask about his job. We both lie and say we're doing well. 6 minutes. I am a $500,000 stranger. I fell for the same lie you're telling yourself right now. I told myself I'd go on that fishing trip after the merger was finalized. I told his mother we'd take that trip to the coast after the mortgage was under control. I'd be present after I was secure. After. But the after is a mirage that retreats as you walk toward it. I was caught in a loop of comfort addiction. I thought that by making his life easier by providing the 400 shoes and the prestigious zip code, I was being a good father. I was actually just buying my own freedom from the hard, messy, unglamorous work of being present. It is much easier to write a check for a Nintendo than it is to sit on the floor and listen to a 10-year-old talk about his fears for 3 hours. One of those things is an expense. The other is an investment. I chose the expense and called it a sacrifice. I watched this pattern repeat until it became the blueprint of my existence. I stayed in a job I loathed for 20 extra years because I was terrified of losing the status I'd built. I stayed for the pension. My colleague Arthur did the same. He talked about his gold watch for a decade. He died 11 days after his retirement party. His desk was cleared and occupied by a 24-year-old with a better tan before Arthur was even in the ground. We trade our only non-renewable resource, time, for pieces of paper that lose value every year. I chose the $40,000 bonus over the 3-line school play on November 14th. I thought I was winning. I can still smell the ozone of that Xerox machine. I can still feel the cold, smooth leather of the boardroom chairs. I have the $40,000. It's sitting in a bank account that pays for the nurses who change my sheets. But I don't have the memory of my son's face when the curtain went up. I traded a miracle for a line item. And the worst part? I'd do it again tomorrow if I didn't have the perspective of a dying man. That is the sickness of the world you live in. You are being trained to value the ledger over the living. You think you're different. You think you'll catch up later. Look at your hands. They're younger than mine, but they're moving toward the same stillness. You are currently trading the final 10% of your life's energy for scraps, hoping that the people you've ignored will be there to cheer when you finally cross a finish line that doesn't exist. The math doesn't lie. Only people do. Stop the video. Don't look away. I want you to look at your hands. Turn them over. Trace the lines on your palms. They look permanent, don't they? They feel solid, but they are a countdown. Every second you've spent listening to me is a second you have surrendered to the past. Right now, 2 versions of you exist. There is the one sitting there, perhaps slightly uncomfortable, planning what to eat for dinner or thinking about that email you need to send. And then there is the version of you at 95, my version. That version of you is screaming back through the decades, clawing at the veil of time, trying to grab you by the shoulders and shake the apathy out of your bones. They are begging you to see that the important thing you rest about today is a ghost. It's smoke. It's a $40,000 bonus that pays for a lonely hospital room. I have no reason to lie to you. I have nothing left to sell. I am simply a man standing at the exit, looking back at a house I spent 50 years building, only to realize I never actually lived in it. I was just the caretaker of the furniture. You are currently suffering from a status quo bias so profound it has become your personality. You keep doing what you're doing because it's what you did yesterday, and because everyone around you is doing the same. You are walking off a cliff in a neat, orderly line. I am telling you to break rank. Here are your orders, not suggestions. Directives. If you want to avoid becoming a $500,000 stranger to the people who should know your soul, do this. First, the digital fast. Tonight, when you walk through your front door, put your phone in a drawer, leave it there for 4 hours. Why it's hard. You will feel an itch in your brain. You will feel bored. You will feel unproductive. What it reveals how much of your connection with your family is actually just you being in the same room as them while your mind is somewhere else entirely. It reveals that you have used a screen to avoid the discomfort of truly seeing the people you live with. Second, the mortality audit. Call your parents or your oldest living relative today. Ask them one question. What is the one thing you did for your career that you now realize was completely pointless? Why it's hard? It requires you to acknowledge their end and yours. It's a vulnerable, awkward conversation. What it reveals that the legacy your job promises you is a lie. It anchors you in the reality that only relationships carry weight at the finish line. Third, the immediate sacrifice. Cancel one essential work commitment this week. Use that time to do something completely unproductive with someone you love. Sit on the grass, build blocks, watch the sunset until the last sliver of purple vanishes. Why it's hard. You fear the consequences. You fear being unreliable. What it reveals that the world continues to turn without your essential input. But the window of time to be a hero to a child or a partner is closing faster than you can imagine. I sat in that boardroom on November 14, 1987, and I thought I was a king. I thought I was winning the game. I wasn't even playing the right game. I won the bonus. I won the house. I won the success. And my prize is a 6-minute phone call twice a year from a man who doesn't know what I fear, what I love, or who I am. I bought the Nintendo and it cost me my son. You still have a choice. You still have a handful of Saturdays left before the frost stays on the windows forever. Don't spend another dollar on the stranger you're becoming. Go now before the door closes.